In this video, we will explore this. Can a negation be a negative position, or is it always a positive claim? We will begin by setting up the hypothetical objection. The idea that a claim of non-existence is simply a lack of belief, requiring no defense or explanation. We will then rigorously apply the established rules of logic to demonstrate that asserting a negation always commits one to a determined state of affairs. Premise 1. The criterion of positivity. Any assertion that establishes a determined state of affairs, a definite yes or definite no regarding reality, constitutes a positive claim. Premise 2. The function of negation. The negation not P is an assertion that the specific reality described by the original proposition P has been definitively falsified. Conclusion. Therefore, a negation not P is a positive claim because it actively asserts the determined state of affairs, the falsity of P. Evidence for premise 1. The principle of bivalence. This is the core logical axiom stating that every declarative sentence expressing a proposition has exactly one truth value, true or false. This principle forces every determined assertion to be a commitment to one of the two positive values, demonstrating that the term positive claims applies to the active commitment to determine truth value, not just the true value. Evidence for premise 2. The law of excluded middle, P versus not P. This law guarantees that for any proposition, either the proposition P is true or its negation not P is true. Since there is no third option, asserting the truth of not P is a decisive act of knowledge that excludes the possibility of P. This determination is an active claim about the state of reality, its falsity. Deductive validity. The entire syllogism is justified because the conclusion necessary follows from the premises. If both premises 1 and 2, as defined by the law of bivalence and the law of excluded middle, are accepted as true, the conclusion must be true. The logical structure itself proves that asserting falsity is a positive commitment to a defined truth value. Our argument will show that the ultimate negation, the assertion of God's non-existence, is not negative. 1. Syllogism of knowledge, epistemological theories. Weak or negative atheism, the simple state of lacking a belief in God, does not assert that God does not exist, only that the evidence for God is insufficient to warrant belief. Premise 1. A determined judgment on the adequacy or quality of any existing evidence constitutes a positive claim regarding the state of knowledge. Premise 2. Weak atheism is the assertion that the existing evidence supporting theism is definitively not equivalent to warrant the commitment of belief. Conclusion. Therefore, weak atheism is a positive claim because it actively asserts a determined objective judgment about the insufficiency of the evidence. Evidence for premise 1. A position cannot be coherently maintained without an internal justification. The claim that evidence is inequivalent is the positive justification for the lack of belief. The justification itself is the claim. Without it, the position is merely an arbitrary preference, not a reasoned stance. Justification for premise 2. The philosophical distinction between weak and strong. Atheism is universally drawn precisely on the axis of evidence. Weak atheism is defined by its focus on the failure of theistic evidence, making the positive identification of this failure the substance of the claim. Agnostic atheism, the assertion that the existence of God is currently unknown or unknowable, leading to a lack of belief. Premise 1. The assertion that a proposition is definitively unknowable or inaccessible to human reason constitutes a positive claim that establishes a determined permanent boundary on knowledge. Premise 2. Gnostic atheism asserts that the existence of God as a proposition that is definitively unknowable by human intellect. Conclusion. Therefore, agnostic atheism is a positive claim because it actively and definitively asserts a determined limitation on the scope of human knowledge. Principle of epistemic boundary. Defining a definite, permanent limit to human knowledge is a global active claim. It is a determined assertion about the structure of reality and intellect, not a passive uncertainty. Justification for premise 1. Justification for premise 2. Commitment to unknowability. The position relies on the positive theist that no current or future evidence can solve the question. This is a committed, determined philosophical stance, not just a personal doubt. Justification for premise 2. Strong or positive atheism. The direct, definite assertion God does not exist. This takes on the burden of proof, establishing the positive claim, not P. Premise 1. In any system where a proposition must be either true or false, the assertion of a proposition's falsity, not P, is equivalent to asserting the determined truth of the mutually exclusive alternative. Premise 2. Strong atheism is the direct, definite assertion that the proposition God exists is objectively false. Conclusion. Therefore, strong atheism is a positive claim because it asserts a determined truth value about the objective state of reality. Justification for premise 1. The law of excluded middle, P versus not P, this is the core axiom of classical logic. By definitely asserting that God exists is not true, one must accept the determination that God does not exist as true. This is an act of commitment. Justification for premise 2. Definition of assertion. Strong atheism, unlike weak atheism, is defined by its affirmative claim of non-existence. A not P statement. The speaker actively takes a side on the ultimate binary truth value, proving their commitment to a determined reality. 2. Syllogism of existence. Ontological theories. Metaphysical naturalism, the positive assertion that the universe consists only of natural elements, matter, energy, physical laws, and that anything beyond those is an illusion or non-existent. Major premise 1. Any coherent worldview must offer a positive, determined explanation that accounts for all observed phenomena. Example, the cosmos, life, consciousness. Premise 2. The assertion of strong atheism is the defined falsity of all transcendent or supernatural explanations for those phenomena. Conclusion. Therefore, the claim of strong atheism necessitates the commitment to metaphysical naturalism as a complete, determined, and positive system of explanation for all reality. Physicalism or materialism. The view that everything is ultimately physical. All mental states, consciousness, and phenomena are reducible to physical brain processes. Justification for premise 1. Principle of explanatory completeness. A worldview is, by definition, a system that attempts to account for everything. It cannot provide a positive, determined explanation for the cosmos, life, etc. It is incomplete and fails as a rational system. Justification for premise 2. Commitment to immanence. The assertion of strong atheism, not P, is a direct act of rejection of any transcendent cause. That this rejection is a positive logical commitment that leaves only the domain of all the natural immanent to provide all necessary explanations. 3. Syllogism of consequence. Axiological theories. Philosophical nihilism, the consistent hard conclusion that life, the universe, and all human values have no objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value because there is no ultimate transcendent guarantor. Premise 1. Any assertion that establishes a determined objective truth about the ultimate value structure of the universe, i.e., whether value is present or definitely absent, constitutes a positive claim. Premise 2. Philosophical nihilism is the consistent assertion that the universe is determined to be objectively devoid of inherent meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. Conclusion. Therefore, philosophical nihilism is a positive claim because it actively asserts a determined objective structure of value or the ultimate lack thereof within the universe. Justification for premise 1. Principle of axiological determination. Defining the fundamental nature of the universe, whether it contains inherent meaning or is definitely devoid of it, is a global act of commitment. It defines a specific state for reality, making it a positive claim. Justification for premise 2. The positive result of negation. Nihilism is the consistent, determined consequence of removing a divine guarantor of value. Theism. It is a non-subjective claim that the universe's ultimate structure is meaningless, which is a powerful positive assertion about its nature. Secular humanism. A philosophical position that rejects religion but prescriptively emphasizes human agency, ethics, and reasoning as the source of morality and meaning. Premise 1. Any assertion that establishes a prescriptive source, a definite ought for universal human meaning, value, or morality constitutes a positive constructive claim. Premise 2. Secular humanism is the assertion that human agency, ethics, and reason are the required determined source of morality and meaning. Conclusion. Therefore, secular humanism is a positive claim because it actively prescribes and constructs a determined moral and meaningful system for humanity. Justification for premise 2. Prescriptivism in ethics. Any statement establishing what ought to be done, a norm, a rule, a source of value, is an active, constructive commitment distinct from merely describing what is. The constructive act is fundamentally positive. Justification for premise 2. Commitment to moral autonomy. The very movement of secular humanism is a positive philosophical project. It does not passively observe the lack of divine law. It actively and definitely installs human reason and ethics as a necessary replacement mechanism for ultimate authority. Anti-theism, the belief that theism, belief in God, is harmful, destructive, or unethical and should be actively oppressed. Premise 1. Any assertion that establishes a definite universal ethical judgment on the harm and value of a belief system constitutes a positive claim about prescriptive morality. Premise 2. Anti-theism is the definite assertion that theism, belief in a God, is harmful, destructive, and unethical, which necessitates active opposition. Conclusion. Therefore, anti-theism is a positive claim because it actively asserts and prescribes a determined universal ethical judgment against a specific belief system. Justification for premise 1. Principle of moral condemnation. To declare a belief system universally harmful is to establish a positive prescriptive ethical rule that the belief system ought not to exist. This is an active constructive commitment to a moral reality. Justification for premise 2. Principle of moral condemnation. To declare a belief system universally harmful is to establish a positive prescriptive ethical rule that the belief system ought not to exist. This is an active constructive commitment to a moral reality.